Hello, we're here at the Seattle Antiquarian Book Fair, Sunday afternoon, October 11th, 2009. I'm Caleb Lee. I'm sitting here with Dennis Melhouse, First Folio, Rare Books in Paris, Tennessee. Dennis, thank you for coming here for our little chat and learn a little bit about you. So I'd like to start out. Okay, good. I'd like to, first of all, talk a little bit about your background, your family, where you were born, where you grew up, and what kind of schooling you had.
I was born in Hannah City, Illinois, a little town in central Illinois. We lived there until about the fourth grade, and we moved to Chicago suburbs because my dad was with Caterpillar, and they were opening plants there, so we moved there. Education, I did my first degree at the University of Illinois in music education.
Doesn't surprise me given your talent as a pianist.
And from there, I got a fellowship and a job playing in the Wichita Symphony, so I went to Wichita State for my first master's degree, which I then did in music history. And after I finished that, I moved back to the Chicago area, went to the University of Chicago, and did a good part of a master's degree in library science. The market wasn't very good for librarians at that time. So while I was there, I got into the personnel department at the University of Chicago library system. And then I went to Loyola in Chicago and did a master's degree in industrial relations.
So you drifted away from the music end of things.
Right. Well, when I was at Wichita, part of my fellowship was working in the music library, which I thought would be just taxing and boring. But I got very interested in it. I got very interested in libraries.
So the music led you to the library.
And that's why I went to the University of Chicago, because of their libraries.
Now, what year was that?
1980 or so. I'm not sure. I think 1980.
Well, you got spending time in Chicago, which at that time there were a tremendous number of bookstores. Is that perhaps the time you first had an introduction to the book trade?
Actually, yes. That's when I first discovered there was such a thing as a used bookstore.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, I had always been interested in books and reading. So in Chicago, while I was a corporate exec, which is what I did for a real career, I was personnel director for major corporations. I had gathered lots and lots of books, and then I discovered used bookstores, and I discovered garage sales and things like that.
Are these books in general fields or particularly music?
Old books. The old books were fascinating.
Old books.
And so after I think like a lot of people, after I gathered like 6,000 or 8,000 books, I started selling some to make room for others and to finance my buying habit. I think a lot of people started that.
Now, how did you start selling them?
We actually started at the Kane County Flea Market. We sold old books and some other bric-a-brac and things like that. And of course it just blossomed from there.
Given the very elegant type of inventory you have these days, it's hard for me to picture that, you at the flea market.
Actually, once at the flea market we sold some old books, and we sold a pair of boxing gloves and other stuff like that.
The idea was to sell. I like that. I can identify with that.
But then eventually, of course, I got serious corporate stress, and we opened an open shop in Chicago.
Where was that?
That was at Sheffield and Wellington, sort of on the near north side of Chicago.
And what was the name of that shop?
First Folio.
First Folio. How did you come up with that? Was there any particular reason?
A friend of ours helped us set up the shop, and he suggested the name. Simple as that. And we've used it ever since. Now, we only had that shop for about 2 years.
That would have been 1984?
Actually, the shop itself would have been like 84 and 85 in that period. And then I developed pretty serious corporate stress, and my partner didn't like living in the middle of big cities too well. So we went to Tennessee and bought 17 acres of my partner's brother's farm.
That is the town that is...
Paris, Tennessee.
Paris, Tennessee.
Actually, when we moved there, we got 2 mobile homes before. We intended to get a house all along, but we got those in the meantime. And I think in Buchanan, or in all of Tennessee, we probably had the only trailer home with a grand piano in it. Maybe.
I'm picturing a very interesting transition. It's almost like a TV show. A Chicago executive finds himself living in a large
rural
trailer
Tennessee.
near Paris, Tennessee.
In rural Tennessee, and it was major culture shock. Let me tell you. But the idea was to just use those long enough until we built a house there, which we didn't do. We went into town and bought an already existing
you did.
house, and that's where we still live now.
Still are.
For about 20 years, I think.
Now, once, of course, you left Chicago, that was the end of the corporate world for you?
Absolutely.
So, does that mean that immediately you became a full-time bookseller?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was still in corporate when we had the bookstore for
Right.
the 2 years in Chicago, but at the end of that, I quit the corporate.
Altogether.
And the intestinal diseases cleared right up and never came back again.
Recalling that, was there any one thing about it, or just an accumulation of aggravation about the corporate world?
Well, I was a personnel executive and technically excellent and politically naive. So a corporate director level, politically naive doesn't work. So when your best friends, your best confidant stab you in the back, then work
It
out.
wouldn't bother anyone.
So I'm poorer now than I was, but I'm still alive and quite happy.
I have gathered that. Certainly, that's my observation. But once you got to Paris, did you then start to expand your little inventory that you brought? How many books did you have when you moved to Paris?
We probably only brought maybe 500 books with us.
What was the nature of those at that time?
Well, just like now we're generalists.
Generalist, but with a predilection towards very fine bindings.
Predilection towards fine bindings,
And-
private press. We have a lot of architecture.
Very fine condition too, we should add.
Now, usually you say that's my specialty, is fine condition.
Fine condition, that is a good specialty. Did you then start to add to it, or do you still have about 500 books?
Oh no, well we still keep the inventory low. We have about less than 2,800 titles in stock at any one time. Of 4,500 reference books, but only about 2,800 books in stock.
Many of the best booksellers have more reference books than they do volumes in inventory.
Well, and this is because we don't have an open shop, so I can't keep a whole lot of just shelf stock, even good shelf stock.
At your home in Paris, are the books in a particular area, kind of like this is the book office area? Or?
Well, we have 4 bedrooms, so 2 of those are pretty much full of books. And then I have a 45-foot office. I walk out downstairs. It has, well, it's mostly the reference collection, but books in process as well.
When you moved to Paris with your inventory, this was well before the internet became part of the trade. How were you managing your business at the time?
Well,
selling your books.
Then as now, our business is mostly book fairs, mainly book fairs.
Mainly book fairs.
And we do 16 to 18 book fairs a year, coast to coast, on the road a lot of the time. Absolutely. First time here in
I
Seattle.
was just about to add
We've
that.
signed up to come back again.
Oh, I'm very happy to hear
We're good.
that. That is great.
But I mean, of course, there's an internet presence, but there's no local presence.
Right, of course not.
There aren't any rare books there.
Right. When the internet first started to really become a force, say in the mid-90s, what was your reaction at the time? Did you embrace it? Did you reject it? Did you look at it with caution?
Well, I was quite wary, of course, because it changed the entire business model, buying books and pricing books and selling books. So it made a major difference. It takes a lot of adjustment, and it still does. And many of us still haven't quite adjusted.
Do you list your books online?
Right. We list them on ABE, of course, on Libris, on the iLab site, and the ABAA site.
Do you have most of your inventory listed?
Most of the time we have all of it listed, and with pictures of every single one.
Do you ever issue catalogs, or have you issued catalogs?
Only 11 or 12. I mean, I just recently did an illustrated catalog, but not too often. Well, we're not home often enough to keep producing them. I might do one again in the December-January book show lull.
Well, I just realized that 18 book fairs a year is 1.5 book fairs a month. That would keep you going.
It is. They tend to group, though, in the fall and in the spring.
Now, do you, does your partner, whom I know well, also named Dennis, does he have an active role in the book business?
Oh yeah. Well, for instance, he does all of our photography, and he does all the driving to all these book fairs as well. And the setup, you notice our display. He does all the display, for which we get lots of comments. But he does all that.
You spend a lot of time driving to the various book fairs.
Usually, when we go as far as here in California, we'll fly
Right.
and ship the books. We couldn't this time just because of logistics, because we were in Texas last weekend.
Yes, I know. I was sort of horrified to hear all
Yeah,
that.
a long drive home.
A long jump.
Long drive.
So you've been in the trade one way or another almost 30 years, it sounds like.
Oh yeah.
Is there, this is a hard question, I know, is there one event that you can so far look back on and say, oh, that was just such a great day or a great find or something that sticks out in your mind? Like
Well, the
that?
San Francisco book fairs are always great days for us. It's always our very best venue, better than even New York for us.
For a lot of people.
For us. But in terms of books, it was probably, a friend of mine came from Japan and said, would you like to sell this book for me? Which was Moxon's Mechanic Exercises, which is the first English handbook on printing. And it was complete, which is unusual, and there's only about 3 or 4 known copies in private hands.
This is a book that's often lacking some of the illustrations.
Right, but this is absolutely complete in the fine binding and everything. And we ended up selling that for $115,000. So I was pretty thrilled about that.
That must have been a very exciting.
Because yeah, we made a good bit of money with no investment.
No investment.
Yeah, just on consignment.
One of the things we haven't hit on all your years in the trade, who were some of the dealers that maybe kind of helped you along or that you look to as role models or for advice, especially in the early days? Is there anybody in the trade that kind of gave you a boost or a hand up?
Well, there's a few, but I think people have advantage when they started if they work for another book dealer.
Right.
Because you learn a whole lot that way, which I never did. So I had to learn it all myself. Of course, all of this odd educational background, music and industrial relations and library science, actually that did help a lot, especially the library science. But I think if you can work for someone else in the beginning, it helps a lot. People like Taylor Bowie, who have trained lots and lots of young booksellers.
I've got a few
You
that
have.
I've sent out into the world.
You have. And then there's people like Bill Reese, who are big specialists and had a lot of employees, and a lot of people have spun off their own businesses from some of these big dealers.
Anybody
I think
in
that's really
Chicago,
significant.
when you first had the shop, anybody in Chicago kind of...
Not really, I don't think. Well, Terry Tanner was there
Terry.
at the time, and he was a really good dealer.
From Hamill and Barker.
Hamill and Barker, he had already taken over their business, so I didn't really know them when they were in business.
Yeah, I knew Frances Hamill
Yeah.
briefly before she passed.
I got a bunch of her collection of miniature books with her little book plate in them.
At least you know Hamill and Barker had a wonderful office in the Tower of the Wrigley Building.
Right.
In Chicago, which is a great place.
It was.
Wonderful place. So nobody who really was, kind of...
I didn't really have a mentor.
That's interesting.
I picked a lot of people's brains, like Richard Cady,
Oh.
and now I pick brains like John Wendell and some other people who I think are significant dealers, and I learn a lot just talking to all these people in the trade.
Yeah, I believe we do learn mostly by just picking it up.
Absolutely, and we're learning an awful lot either at exhibiting or just attending book fairs, walking around talking to dealers and looking at the books. Just learning an immense amount. Plus, I also read a lot of bibliographies, which is pretty boring, but I like it.
The nature of the kind of books you sell, which are so a great deal of the wonder of them, the appeal of them is in their just visual qualities. You really have to do book fairs to allow people to handle these books and see them.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't be able to sell a lot of these books as easily just on the computer.
Well, we do sell some online because we have a picture, most everything, but only one picture.
Right.
And so a lot of times if a customer's interested, we will put, and they inquire, we'll take several pictures and send them to them so they at least see most of it. But you're right, handling makes a huge difference. But our books, people say we have pretty books. It's just that I only buy books in excellent condition. But they still have content. They're real books inside. Fine bindings with real books inside. Not just red books and blue books.
Right. And green books.
Yeah.
But who are some of the, you mentioned a few people, I think, great regard for. Bill Reese, very well known. Richard King, not so well known,
Yeah.
but quite an influential fellow in his own right.
And a bit eccentric, like most booksellers,
Like all
myself
booksellers.
included.
All booksellers. We'll just say it right now. If you're a bookseller, you're eccentric, whether you know it or not.
Well, he was in Chicago at the time, and I had a lot of contact with him.
Yeah.
So I just learned a lot that way.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't. I did the Chicago Book Fair in 1985. Of course, you weren't in the ABAA then.
At the Palmer House.
Palmer House.
Well, I did some show at the Palmer House when you were there. You had Mark Wessels.
So that was in '95.
Was it
I'm talking
95?
about back in the '80s.
Yeah.
Actually, the one I'm talking about was his old merchandise mart.
Oh, I wasn't a member then.
When did you join the ABAA?
Well, must have been, if we moved to Tennessee in about 86, about 87, I
Really?
guess, yeah. Yeah, because I knew that I had to in order to do all these book fairs coast to coast.
So it was really a necessity for you as much as anything, rather than just.
Absolutely. But if you're going to be a professional bookseller, you need to belong to the Professional Booksellers Association anyway. You bet.
What do you see as the future of the ABAA?
Oh boy, nobody knows that, do they? Well, like I say, it's still the only real professional organization, and I think it's going to be essential to our future, our success with the uncertain economic times. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But I do think once the economy settles down a little bit and people get a little more confidence again, to me it seems that the future is kind of in the really more rare things, because with the even slightly common things, there's too many of them on the internet, and it's a race to bottom price on internet pricing.
A phrase that I use almost every day.
Yeah.
Someone else mentioned there's really no such thing anymore as the good, solid $15 and $20 book. They're all worth $1.
They're on the $1 on the internet. So I try to get just more and more, the more rare things all the time. But in my case, they have to be in excellent condition. I just don't want them.
I've noticed you haven't really moved into, as many dealers have, in the area of more ephemeral things, that you're still pretty much sticking to.
Pretty much books, yeah. They just never interested me much, that's all. A lot of people do. I mean, at this book fair, I got a lot of requests for sheet music.
We mentioned Bill Reese, Katie. Who are some of the other people that you think are not the most famous, some of this?
The most famous, like the Baumans, and who cannot respect the Baumans, they have a whole lot more courage than I do.
They do. It's an amazing operation.
And they're a significant force in the book.
And a force for good.
And we've sold them tons of books over there, and as have most people.
Book fair is sort of your chosen venue. More sales to dealers these days or fewer?
Well, lately, actually, fewer. I mean, used to be, just not very many years ago, I would maybe sell 2/3 of my show before the show even opened. And my trade is still, I think it's still pretty much 75% to the trade. I mean, we've done fairly well here, but I think we only have 2 retail sales. So, even though my stuff looks a little expensive, it's still all sold to the trade.
That tells you quality.
There you go.
Out.
There you go. And I think that's what the whole answer is.
I have always told people that even if you think you paid too much for something, it's a wonderful copy of it. You didn't. On your travels to go to these book fairs, 16, 18 a year, is this how you acquire a lot of inventories on the road?
I buy a lot of it actually at the book fairs. And now this trip we didn't really have time to stop at a lot of bookstores, but I do buy a lot that way, of course. But most of my stuff comes from the book fairs and from bookstores. And I will buy online from dealers that I know. If I think this is someone who knows what they have and how to describe it.
You touched just briefly on the role of the ABAA, and certainly the internet has opened up so that anyone with a computer and web page can say they're a bookseller. How do you see the ABAA helping to keep some sort of standard in the trade? Would that not be one of the more important?
But I think it just does keep a standard in the trade just by reputation and by the code of ethics, and everyone knows a professional reputation to be a book dealer. So I think it's really important. Like you say, everyone with a box of books and a computer is an internet person. bookseller, whether they know what they have or not.
Well, let's say just got out of college and I always wanted to be in the book business. I don't have a chance to go to work for an established bookseller, but I want to get in the book trade. What advice would you give to somebody coming in like that?
I would say talk to all the professional booksellers that you can. Pick their brains. Go to the book fairs. Go to their schools. Ask questions. Handle the books.
What about some of the booksellers' school things?
Actually, I've never gone to one myself, but I did. Everyone who goes to the one in Colorado comes away very, very pleased.
Very motivated.
They say motivated and say they've learned a great deal. I mean, I think that's a wonderful thing. And the one in Charlottesville probably is too. It's very professional. I think they're probably a little more specific, a little more specialized. But I think a young, someone just starting out should go to this Colorado seminar. Everyone comes away very pleased with it.
Would you ever consider joining the faculty of such a thing?
Well, Tom Congleton, who's one of my heroes, by the way.
Between the covers books?
Between the covers. I mean, there's a guy who really knows his way around the trade, and really is a great businessman. One of my best friends, and a very, very generous guy. And what was the question?
With that lovely description of Tom, now would you consider joining the faculty of one of those book schools?
That's what brought that up, because Tom said they might want to call me sometime to be on the faculty, talk about bindings or private press books or something like that. So yeah, I would probably consider it.
The other thing you could teach is having high standards.
High standards.
And sometimes so high that a number of times I've been unable to sell you a book because it just didn't quite meet your standards. And I appreciate it.
Well, if it has flaws in it, I won't buy it. Unless it, it can sustain the cost of restoration.
Absolutely.
And then when the customer comes to me, I have nothing to apologize for.
Absolutely.
Deborah was 196 for the inbound shipping.
And I advise customers, well, my customers anyway, I say, don't buy this book in off condition, because then you're going to come along and buy it in great condition, and you can't get rid of the first one. So
Right, that was only about.
You're never saving money by buying a
Right, different, yes.
You're going to retire from book trade? Please say that.
No, I won't even want to.
No.
As long as I'm physically able. I mean, we get in this business because of our passion for books. So, I mean, maybe you come to point out do less book fairs because I have to, physically or something. But most people I know never retire.
Just
can't and don't want to.
Don't want to. We will see you at the book fair so long as the highway system.
You bet.
And
the airlines.
And the airlines too. Dennis, thank you very much.
Oh, sure.
It's been a lot of fun.
It has.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing you here in Seattle next year.
Absolutely. I've already signed up.
All right.
No, that's not that.